morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome wherever you're watching from in the world right now. My name is Brenda Meller, and I'm welcoming you today to my show, which I call Enthusiastically Self-Employed. For those of you who are self-employed, whether you're a coach, consultant, speaker, author, solopreneur, small business owner, wherever you are in that cycle of doing business, we are here for you. And I'm excited because we're going to be talking about accounting today. And I brought on with me a very special guest, Michelle Carley. Hey, Michelle, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you, Brenda?
I am
And folks out there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm delighted to see you. We've been talking
Thanks.
about doing this show for a while, and I'm excited the day's finally here. So, hey, I want to welcome our audience. Be like Lisa, who just dropped into the comments that she is watching hashtag Team Live. She's watching us with us live today. And by the way, if you do drop a comment, I bring your name up on screen so you get some additional visibility. And right now, Michelle, we are live streaming on 3 networks. We're on LinkedIn, we are on YouTube, and we are also on Instagram. So if you're watching on any of those networks, do let me know, and I'll be pulling your comments up on screen. Now, while we're waiting for those audience comments to start coming in, Michelle, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? So tell us your name, who do you help, what do you help them with? Give us a little bit of that background.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm the CEO and founder of the Big Easy Bookkeeping Company, and I help a few small businesses by doing their bookkeeping, but for them. But the majority of my clients are using a do-it-yourself accounting system that I designed. So the people we help are like small nonprofits, groups, clubs, small businesses, consultants, solopreneurs, service type providers. We help them to master their bookkeeping without stress using our easy do-it-yourself system. So it's a Google Sheet, actually, a Google Sheet system. It's all in one simple to use bookkeeping program without the hassles and headaches of QuickBooks. And just to give you a little background on me, in school, I grew up in Detroit, and I could not read. And this is before they figured out I was dyslexic or something. But
Mhm.
so I was good at math, though. And so when I graduated from high school, I went on to work in a little factory, and they wanted me bottling windshield solvent and then muriatic acid. And I'm like, wait a minute, is there any other jobs I could have? So they said, sure, in the office. So that's how I kind of started in bookkeeping. I got into the office and I started um, doing books there. And then I went on to other companies. And from there, I became the controller of 2 different companies, and I didn't have a degree, so I hit a ceiling. And so I went into my own bookkeeping service. And that's when I started working with small business development centers and found that people struggled with their bookkeeping to reconcile, to determine a profit or loss. So that's why I came out with my bookkeeping system. So yeah,
That's
that's
great.
kind of a little background on me. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
love it. I always love to hear the backstory about how people came to be where they are. And I think that's an important part of, we're calling this show Enthusiastically Self-Employed because sometimes it's not a linear path. It's, more of sometimes life puts you on a path or there's 2 paths to choose from and you start going in different directions without even realizing this is maybe it's all part of the big master plan, but I think we discover as you did, Michelle, what we like doing. You like accounting, you like working
Mhm.
with numbers. And I see Lisa, I love your comment, Lisa, because she says, I'm not interested in DIY. The good thing is, there are people out there. There's the analogy of teach a man to fish and he'll never go hungry in a lifetime. And I have a modification of that, which is sometimes people want to pay for the fish. Like they will pay you to get the fish for them and they'll pay a team premium price for
Mm,
that. Is
that's
that
true.
part of what you do in your business? Do you do bookkeeping for people in addition to showing them how, or is it mostly the do it yourself and you're coaching them?
It's only for a few clients that I do the bookkeeping. The majority of the clients are using this do-it-yourself system, you
Okay.
know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good
Mhm.
to know. All right, awesome. So we're going to jump in today, and I'm very excited. As a marketing person, I am not an accounting person. Full disclosure, and we're talking today about keeping accounting records up to date for easier tax prep. So we're just going to jump right in here, and I'm just going to, ask Michelle, like, where do we even get started with this process, and what do we need to know about our accounting records as it relates to tax prep?
Yeah, well, what I have found with the people that I talk to, they're just very unorganized with their records, and it makes it so difficult for them at tax time. And they never know, how much money they have coming in, where they spent it, how much money they have in the bank account. I mean, they can look it up, but most people just don't have a handle on where all the money is going. And so another big problem I see is that, well, you don't want to mess with the IRS. So you really
Mhm.
want to get your taxes in order. So your estimated income taxes are determined by your profits. So, you want to have good records for that. You don't want to pay fines and penalties. So
Mhm.
and tax returns that need to be accurate. And
Mhm.
to do that, you have to have accurate reports from your accounting system. So, and plus, you want peace of mind. That's why we do, what we do is, so that if we're ever audited, we have backup. We're
Mhm.
settled about it, So, you need an easy to use system to get organized, to prove your records are accurate and not to leave money on the table. So, yeah.
Yeah, I put the statement you just said. I feel like that could be a bumper sticker for accountants. You don't want to mess with the IRS. Like it has a little bit of a rhyme to it. Maybe
Yeah.
you don't want it on a coffee mug to see that every day necessarily, but I
Yeah.
love the point of like knowing what you need to do and having backup so that you don't have to worry about it. Like I was always the kind of person in school growing up. I always wanted to do things by the rules so that I wasn't worried about being tapped on the shoulder and called up to the teacher's desk or brought to the principal's office. Whereas I think some people, they're like, well, I'll live on the edge with this. And look, there's some gray, areas within taxes and loopholes. And I'd rather like be on the up and up and do everything. But,
Absolutely.
for many people, this whole concept of, getting materials ready for tax prep can feel very overwhelming. So what would you say, Michelle? What do we need to know about our accounting records as it relates to getting things ready for tax prep?
Yeah, well, I would say that for one, I've got four tips here, four
Mhm.
tips, my
Oh,
top
great.
tips for tax preparation. I'd say, know your numbers. So,
Mhm.
what I mean by that is, you want to be able to generate reports and look at these reports and say, wow, my utilities were 300 every month this year, except for this month, they're 800. Like, why? You want the numbers to tell a story and to tell you that everything's in place and everything's right. And anyways, another tip is that you want to know what you can or cannot deduct in the way of expenses. And so on our website we have list of tax deductible um, expense categories, that 35 different ones for different industries. So anyone's welcome to go and get a list
Okay.
that way. Another tip is, this is a big one that I think people don't get, but we all meet with people all the time, and
Mhm.
we schedule a day and a time. But when it comes to our record keeping, we don't do that. We
Mhm.
wait till 3 months or 8 months or the end of the year, and that doesn't work very well. So I would say a tip is to schedule an hour every month that you will get your books done. Put it in your calendar, schedule a
Mhm.
day and a time. So that's one of my tips. And one of the things with our system is, anyone using our system, they're going to be able to get on a Zoom call, like what we're doing here, and everyone's going to be doing their bookkeeping by themselves at the same time, and I'm there to help. So that's one thing that's coming up in July,
So it's
this
like
month.
kind of like a group coaching, like get access to an expert, but you can also learn from other questions too. Is that fair to say?
Well, actually, they'd be doing their bookkeeping. So they would
Okay.
have maybe their CSV file with all their transactions. They're entering it into their own system in their own office. But I'm on there with the group, and
Okay.
I could go into a side chat and help someone if they ran into some troubles. So
Okay.
yeah. The other tip I was thinking, you want to find a system that works for you so tax time is a breeze. I
Mhm.
mean, nobody wants to come to the end of the year and have to recreate records. It's just a
Oh my
big mess.
gosh, yeah.
So, yeah, yeah.
You remind me of like my first few years in business where I'm like, I'll do it later, I'll do it later. And then it comes to
Mhm.
January and I get I'm working with the CPA now and she's like, here's what I need from you.
Right.
And it's she does our personal taxes for myself, my husband, our household, but she also does my business taxes. So when we get into the business taxes, it's little things like mileage that when I
Right.
worked in corporate, I would have to submit a mileage report and get reimbursed for miles like every month throughout the year. And they really stood on top of us. And when you're self
Oh,
employed, there's no accounting department that's
yeah.
saying you need to get your expense reports in. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I get to every year, it's like I do this to myself every year, Michelle. January, February, I'm looking back at, and luckily I have everything in my Google Calendar, places I've driven to, but
Okay.
I'm spending hours and days catching
Yeah.
up. I love
Yeah.
your tip of like booking an hour a month just to,
Yeah.
I think that's a great tip just to keep it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
those are my tips. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good. Well,
So,
that's awesome. So, and there's probably people that are watching that are in different phases of their business. I say watching, they could be listening to this on the podcast later.
yeah.
So is there different advice you would give to someone who's just getting started? Let's talk there first. Someone who's just getting
Yeah.
started, they've not made any mistakes yet. They haven't had any processes in place. What advice would you give to them as getting started with the process? And then next I'm going to say,
Right.
what about somebody who's already well established working with a CPA? Like what might be
Okay.
different there?
Okay, so a solopreneur, you're just getting started. I would say you don't know what you don't know.
Mhm.
So it's good to go and follow like a startup checklist of things you should have set before you actually open the doors. And we have a checklist that's free if anybody wants to get that. It's got, I think, maybe a dozen things, like choose your business structure, whether you're going to be a sole proprietor or a S corp, and things like open a separate business account and keep all your startup costs separate because they're handled separately, differently on your balance sheet. So
Okay.
you want to keep those separate from operating expenses. So the accountant's going to want to see that. So, anyways, that's one thing. Another thing for solopreneurs, I'd say, starting up.
Mhm.
You want to choose, obviously, a simple bookkeeping system so that you'll be organized and ready, from day one. So,
Mhm.
you don't want to miss expenses because if you miss expenses, you're going to pay more in taxes because your
Mhm.
your profits will be higher when they should have been lower because of those expenses. But I
Yeah.
wanted to mention that way back when I first started creating these systems, I created a paper bookkeeping system.
Mhm.
And that system was used by, and you probably know the name, Two Men in a Truck, Mary Ellen
Oh
Cheese.
yeah. Mhm.
She used it for 2 or 3 years in the beginning. She said it was a godsend. It was just something she needed to get going, and
Mhm.
so obviously she outgrew it very quickly. So she's
Yeah.
like an international franchisor now. So anyways, and then one other thing is build a good support team.
Mhm.
Someone that you can get answers right away. Because if you don't have it in place, a support team in place when you've got the questions, you're going to be kind of behind the eight ball. So
Yeah.
those are my little
Okay, so
tips.
I have a couple questions related to some of those statements too. I love the
Mhm.
build. Let's start with the build a good support team. So who does that consist of? Is it like a CPA? Is it fellow business owners? Like who is it? Who's
Well,
your support team?
it depends on your type of business, but I
Mhm.
would say obviously you want an accountant, a CPA. You want maybe even a lawyer, maybe a tech person.
Mm,
Like I value my tech person a lot,
yeah,
because I've got a tech writer and he's like really good. He can put together things that I just, anyways.
yeah,
Yeah, you have to have a team. So
yeah.
yeah, those are a few people that I would say, you should have on your team.
Okay.
So,
And then when you talked about startup costs versus operating costs, now I
mhm.
think I know what you're referring to in And it sounds like those are treated differently as as it relates to tax time. But
Yes.
could you give us some examples of what a startup cost would be compared to what is an operating cost?
Well, a startup cost, okay, it's before you're operating your business, it's before you've opened the business. So you are, let's say you're doing research,
Mhm,
and that could be a valid expense if you open your business. You know what I mean?
mhm.
Um, anything that you purchase in the way of equipment, it might have to be written off as a startup cost. So that's
Okay.
something an accountant would have to tell you, a tax preparer,
Okay. So it
so
could be things like if I buy a desk for my home office or a laptop
mm,
um, for my business, that might be treated as a startup cost versus an operating expense, but my CPA would help me with that. Is that fair
right,
to say?
right,
Okay.
right,
Yeah.
exactly.
And I know we're putting
Mm.
you on the spot here, and I feel like
No,
I should do the legal disclaimer right now. This information provided in this podcast and this episode is only for informational and educational purposes. We always recommend that you talk to your CPA or lawyer to make sure that
absolutely.
the advice that you're hearing is applicable to you, because this is more general in nature without understanding, different implications of your
Mhm.
particular circumstance. And then I did pull up on screen and I put it into the comments as well. You had a couple resources that you gave me in advance of the call that we might talk about. And you mentioned the startup checklist. So that's a downloadable document for free that we can get. Is that right?
Yeah, you just have
Okay.
to sign up for it, and yeah, you put in your email, and
Okay.
then that'll be sent to you. Yeah.
Okay. And then talk to me about the list of tax deductible expense categories for your industry. So if I were to go to that webpage right now, I could find the industry that best fits me. And then there's categories, rather list of expenses for
Yeah,
that.
there's like
Okay.
35 different like industry lists there.
Okay.
Or you could just choose any small business, and that's going to give you the general list.
Okay.
And you're still going to have to tweak whichever list you pick, but those
Yeah.
lists actually get imported and set up in our system when if people use that. But yeah, it's the
Okay.
same list. So yeah.
Okay, good to know. And I'm noticing I have like this and I've got like a dual monitor and I'm watching my Instagram feed and the page on the other side. And I just noticed the web addresses when I show them, it's really hard to read them on Instagram. So I'm just going to advise the people, if you're watching this
Yeah.
on Instagram and you can't figure out the link to type in, just go to the bigeasy.com website homepage and I think you can get to those pretty easily if I'm
Yes.
remembering correctly from there.
Sure. There's a free offers page and resources. So those are the two pages, would have both of those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Mhm.
And you've done such a great job of organizing your website. I'm like, I'm sure she
Oh,
has it on here, but I'll just
thanks.
mention that to her. So let's talk about, common mistakes, or pitfalls to avoid, because I'm sure you see a lot. And sometimes the mistakes have already been made when people are coming to you or you're looking at, helping them untie the knots that they've gotten themselves into. So what are those common mistakes or pitfalls that we need to be avoiding?
Well, okay, so some mistakes that I've noticed. Most people don't know how to keep accurate books, and they're afraid that they'll make mistakes and that
Mhm,
that will cost them, which,
mhm.
it's probably true for a lot of people. They feel like, oh, I'm not good at accounting. I'm afraid I'm going to make mistakes. But like, um, there's ways to find errors. Like in our system, there's three different ways that you can find errors. Like if you forgot to categorize something, it's going to say, hey, on this row, on this column, you forgot to categorize, so it,
Okay.
it points you in the right direction. But so you can build some confidence that way.
Mhm.
Another thing is not knowing what to track. People like they might not know they need to track sales tax or mileage or certain expense categories. So, that's another thing. Another mistake, what else? That they're using cumbersome systems that are
Yeah.
wasting time, and it doesn't need to be that way. So if anyone has and wants to put in the chat, some of the reasons that they don't feel confident to do their own bookkeeping, that would be good.
Mhm.
Um,
There
Yeah.
might even be people that are like, this is all brand new. So when I
Mhm.
hear bookkeeping, I'm thinking of, an accountant, a CPA who's doing the process, but you're saying like we can do this on our own and we don't
Yeah.
it sounds like if you've got a good process or system that you're using, it should guide you through so you can do your own bookkeeping. And ultimately, bookkeeping helps you to prepare for tax time to make sure that your business is doing everything on the up and up. Is that
Yeah. Yeah.
fair to say?
True. True. A couple
Mhm.
other things I would say is, depending on how you learn, you should
Mm,
get a system that is going to have the support you need. So if you're the type of person that likes to watch videos, then, make sure that, the support that they have, whoever, is offering this software, they have videos for you,
mhm.
or a user guide you like to read,
Yeah,
or, that, or a video chat if you run into troubles, or a phone call. I mean, everyone learns in different ways. So I think that helps to get people a little more confident in doing their own books if they have a
mhm.
really great support system. So
Yeah. And
yeah.
sometimes you don't know if you're just at the beginning part of the process and maybe talking to people who are just getting their business started. They're like, I didn't even think about this. Like, and we probably
Mhm.
all started off the same way. I'll just use my own. It was in an Excel spreadsheet because you're kind of curious. Gosh, I'm starting to make money coming into my business. And then, for me in the beginning, Michelle, I was only doing this as a side hustle until I found a job. So I did have an LLC set up. I had a separate bank account at the time,
Okay.
but I was only doing this until I found a job. But
Yeah.
then I started going, wait, there's potential here. So I started tracking things in an Excel spreadsheet and my income and my expenses. And then it got to the point where the Excel spreadsheet just got a bit unwieldy. And I had my bank state and I'm like, I don't know what to do. And I asked around and there's a lot of different accounting software and bookkeeping software and things out there. I ended up using QuickBooks. I've been first using the desktop version. Now I use QuickBooks Online and I have access to it for my mobile app and I can share it with my CPA. For the average person, though, starting out, you might not need a full QuickBooks or, there's a lot of different versions of software out there. You could work within something that is a free version like a Google Sheets, or it sounds like you've got a system that helps people as well if they want to opt into that. Is that right?
It works in between, like doing your own bookkeeping on Excel and
Okay.
doing it in a QuickBooks. QuickBooks, a lot of people need, for one, they need to set it up correctly.
Yeah.
Okay, I've seen ones that are not set up right, and it's a mess,
Yeah.
and that doesn't work. So yeah, it works well if it's set up correctly, but I think it's overkill. It's like way too big for some companies. I mean, as
Mhm.
long as you don't need to print checks, you know, or as long as you don't need to operate in an accrual system instead of cash, because the system we have is cash basis,
Mhm.
which most service businesses can use. But
Mhm.
so manufacturers, they would definitely want to use something bigger than like what we have. But
Right.
service businesses, it's ideal for a lot of them. So
Let me back you up into because you just said cash base versus accrual base, and I think I know what that means, but there's probably a good chance if I kind of am curious about it, there's probably somebody else who's confused about what that means. So can you break that down and explain what's the difference between
well,
cash based versus accrual based?
yeah, well, cash base is like you're recording your expenses. Like if you write the check today, wait, let me see how I should say this. Let me look at the accrual system. The accrual system
Mhm.
is like, let's say you bill something today, but you don't get paid for 2 months.
Okay.
It's still going to go in today's, but in a cash system, it's going to show up 2 months from now when you get the money.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of the difference. But with an accrual system, it's more elaborate. You have receivables and payables, and you have aging reports, and you have maybe you track inventory, and it's a big program.
Yeah.
It's a big program, but not everyone needs that. I mean, I feel like the programming behind QuickBooks. I mean, you could fire a rocket ship with all the
And
code
there's
that's in
there's
there.
probably so many
Okay.
things I don't use inside QuickBooks, and I'm one of those people, like, when I first set it up, I kinda went through the tutorials and videos and then at some point, I'm like, I messed something up and things were duplicating in the ledger and I couldn't figure out why. And I started asking around,
Yeah.
can somebody help me? I didn't want to outsource it completely. I really wanted to learn it myself, but I needed somebody to untie the knots that I had created and help me to fix it. So I was working with a QuickBooks coach for many months, and then he was helping with my account reconciliation every month. And then I realized I could do this myself. And from time to time, I come and do a QuickBooks question where I need some help. But I would tend to agree with you. Sometimes I feel like all of the bells and whistles I have access to in QuickBooks are way too much for what I need. But it's like sometimes you get into the system and it's just easier to keep going with the system that you have than,
Absolutely. I hear
right.
that all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the trade out.
It's like it's hard to switch out. It's hard, you know, even if you're having some real troubles, it's like
Mhm.
I'm just going to keep going because I don't know what to do. And one thing we do have for our new clients is we have a 3-day setup where we can set up your system. We can transfer over your categories and your beginning balances and that kind of thing. So we have a 3-day free custom setup. So
Okay.
if anybody wants to try to downsize their accounting and not use such a cumbersome one,
Yeah.
I just want to mention I had this tornado come through a while
Oh,
back,
no.
and I told the tree trimmer that's coming to show up after 1 o'clock. Well, they're here. It's like,
Ah,
oh, great.
this is life. This is live, people. We are not
Yeah, I
perfect.
could
We are
show
not.
you that got this truck. And it's, anyways, 1 o'clock. I told them. Okay,
Oh,
so
that's okay. It all
yeah,
happens.
yeah.
What I would like to invite our audience, we're going to open this up for some Q&A, change gears a little bit here. I've already been asking Michelle a couple questions, but I want to invite our audience. If you have any questions, please submit them into the chat, whatever network you're watching on. And again, we're on LinkedIn, we're on YouTube, we're on Instagram. LinkedIn and YouTube feeds the videos into StreamYard so I can pull them up and read them up on screen. And I always double check, Michelle, because sometimes StreamYard drops the baton on transferring comments over to LinkedIn, or maybe it's vice versa. LinkedIn drops the baton. So I always like to double check, and I have my LinkedIn open in another window. And I have Instagram open because right now Instagram isn't giving the comments to StreamYard that are coming in. So I have to manually go out there and pull those in. But YouTube comments are coming in here as well. So it does take about 30 seconds from the time I say submit your questions into chat until the time they hear it. And then it might be another 30 seconds to a minute, Michelle, before we start seeing those questions that are coming in. So that's why I always like to have a couple of questions of my own that are prepped and getting in here. And as a reminder for everyone, we're here today talking about keeping accounting records up to date for easier tax prep. I'm going to give you a question, Michelle, and I'm going to use a technique that Joey Himmelfarb and I will frequently use this technique, and we'll say, I have a friend who, so I'm going to use my I have a friend technique. I have a friend who hasn't done her mileage and she's self-employed, and it's now July 2nd and she hasn't done her mileage for 2024. What do you recommend? Should she do a month at a time? Should she block off an hour a month for the rest of the year and get caught up? Should she block out the better part of a day to do it? Like, what's the best way to get caught up if we're nearly halfway through the year and we haven't been doing some accounting for mileage year to date?
Well, it depends on how she's handling that mileage. I mean, if it depends. I mean, I would say to take a block of time and try to get caught up through the end of June, even if she has to do like just a couple months today and a couple months in a week or two, but she must drive a lot if she's got a lot to do, like that. Because my mileage, I mean, I'm able to, you know, it's a quick and easy thing. But there are some apps that you can use for mileage. I don't use one, but I've heard of those. So, you might, after you get caught up, switch into something that helps you to keep track of it a little bit better. That's what
Yeah.
I would say.
That is a good technique. I will share that with my friend, whoever she
Okay.
is.
Okay.
And this is like I'm sure this is common with other people. What my friend ends up doing every year is everything goes into her Google Calendar. So she sits down and if she has the address location, she pulls up Google Maps and does the mileage from home to there and prints a PDF, records the mileage in an Excel spreadsheet, and kind of goes through day by day, month by month. So it ends up being typically a Saturday and Sunday project for her in the February, March timeframe to
Oh,
get caught
yes,
up for the April tax period. But
sure.
I have heard of some of those apps. And if anyone's watching has examples of apps that they're using for mileage tracking, please feel free to share them and I will share them with my friend because it might be
Okay.
helping people out along the way. Let's see, any other questions? So if you are self-employed and we're talking today about keeping accounting records up to date for easier tax prep. The information that you've been sharing with us today, Michelle, are you assuming somebody is going to a CPA or an HR block or one of those places to have their taxes done? Do you recommend people try to do it themselves? Do you have any advice there at all? And when we get to the
Well,
tax parts.
yeah, most people won't tackle that, the tax returns, but you can. I mean, there's the TurboTax, and
Yeah.
a lot of people will go to their accountants, at least for the first maybe year or two, just to get a feel for like what things they really need to have a handle on.
Hmm.
So that's, it depends. You mentioned new businesses, but I was going to mention that established businesses, they usually have a CPA in place, and they usually have some history, and at an advantage than over the new people because
Mm,
they can come up with budgets, because a budget is really just you know um, figuring out what your future is going to look like based on the past. So
yeah.
that's one little tip I was going to mention earlier. But they, yeah, if they're working with a CPA, that CPA is probably going to do their tax return for
Yeah.
them. But I'll tell you something. There's a shortage of accountants out there. I don't know if people are aware of that. So that you might be paying a little higher price if you want accountants to do the bookkeeping part, but they're definitely great at doing the tax returns. So
Yeah. And I love the thought there of even working with someone your first few years so you understand tax strategies and how to line everything up and get right. And then maybe go on your own. My CPA, I usually work with her once a year on our taxes, but we usually get together uh either before taxes are done or sometimes both before and after to talk about tax strategies for the year. Because if you're hit with a big tax bill that you weren't expecting, and I
right.
do the prepay quarterly, and then we got to the end of the
Okay.
year and we said, uh-oh, there's some more money that we owe. So, luckily I don't know if you're familiar with Mike McAllowitt's Profit First, if you're familiar with that. It was a book.
No.
It was a book that was recommended to me by a friend, Tammy Pereira. I'm going to give her a shout out when I first started my business. And it was basically a way of setting up your money that's coming into your business so that it's almost like an envelope system. So, Mike McAllowitz's teachings and Profit First are really great. So every dollar that comes into your business gets split apart and you basically set up multiple bank accounts. So you got to find a bank that allows you to do something like this. And
Oh,
sometimes they'll have minimum thresholds that you have to keep in each account in order not to get hit with the monthly transaction fees. But basically, for every, say, $100 that comes into my business, 50% of that, well, 5% right off the top goes into my profit hold account. So that's just my profit that I'm taking off. 50% goes into my owner's compensation. So that goes into my paycheck, essentially. I get paid myself. 20% goes into my operating expenses, and 25% goes into my tax hold account so that I'm setting money aside for taxes all year long and pulling money out of that. So it really, my income account is just a place that money comes into, and then twice a month it gets split out into these different accounts. So what that helps
yeah.
me with is, as a marketer, I'm not an accounting person. Like if I see I have this amount of money, I think I have that to spend. I really don't, because I've got operating expenses, I've got taxes, I've got my paycheck. So if you split it out, then the money that you're looking at in your owner's compensation account is all you have for your paycheck.
Yeah.
And then it helps you with your operating expenses as well, because I've seen friends that are self-employed that outsourcing this, they have a VA, they've got this and the others, and they're eating away and they have no paycheck for themselves because they're paying for all
Yeah.
these outsourced services. So his system has taught me, and I know many others, on a better way of managing money flow for your business so that you're
Yeah.
only spending to the extent that you have money in your operating expense accounts and you pull back in months that you don't have as much on there.
That's excellent. That's excellent. I'll have to check into that because it sounds wonderful, you know. Yeah,
Yeah.
sounds really good. And you said a paper, like an envelope system. I wanted to mention to people, I don't know if we're getting close to the end, but I have a receipt storage like organizer, a receipt storage book
Hmm.
that I'd like to give away to
Yeah.
anyone who might want to take a Zoom call and take a tour of the software. Just mention
Yeah, you know what? I'm
this
gonna drop
interview.
that up on
Yeah.
the banner up on screen. Let me just put that up on screen, and I'll
Yeah,
put
it's
this
just
all
12 monthly envelopes, that you can put in per month. Those little receipts that you'd never know what to do with,
yeah.
or by category, I guess you could separate them. So
Yeah,
yeah.
there you go. So I'll put that up on screen. I do
Yeah.
also have your and I'll put that in the playback link in the show notes as well. So those that are listening to the podcast later can come in and check that out as well. So I pulled up on screen, Michelle, your LinkedIn profile. I love that you've got the big easy bookkeeping logo and it says we make keeping your books easy. I guess it is easy there.
Yeah.
Are you open to accepting connection requests for people on LinkedIn? And if so, any
Yeah.
instructions?
Oh, absolutely. Just go ahead and connect with me. Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great.
Wonderful. All right. And I'll just let all
Welcome.
you know it's Michelle Carley, and her first name is Michelle. Last name is Carley, Carley. And you'll have the link in show notes if you want to visit her profile. And then also, I want to pull up your website up on screen real quick here, too, Michelle. And is there anything you want to point out to us on the website that we've already talked about today? And any
Oh,
resources you want to share?
well, I do have the monthly Ask the Expert Do It Yourself bookkeeping webinars. If anyone's interested, it's the third Wednesday every month. So that's coming up. What else? I think that's it. I mean, the resources page and the free offers has our 14-day trial if anyone's
Mhm.
interested. And it's a Google Sheet, so you can collaborate with people. It's quite nice. We came out with it just before COVID, so
Okay.
yeah, that was interesting timing. But
Yeah.
anyways,
I'm going to pull this a little bit larger. My eyes are getting harder to read the screen. I'm sure the audience probably appreciates that too. So I can see there's a couple things in your top menu bar. My eyes are drawn to free offers and resources, especially. So I think we should spend a little bit of time poking around in there and figure out if there's anything that can be helpful for
yeah.
us. Would you agree with that?
You could click on the free offers. We do have another thing that's our forever free invoicing tool. So,
Okay.
especially for people who, are slow in getting billings out. I mean, you need to get those bills out so your cash flow, is
Mhm.
good, and you can track payments in there as well. And yeah, so those are the free items. The invoicing tool, the startup checklist, and the tax deductible expense category lists. So if you
Great.
want to click into resources, I could
Mhm.
show you. There's a whole list. If you click on the tax deductible
Oh,
expense.
yeah. That was the thing that we had talked about
Yeah,
earlier.
there's a
Yeah.
huge list of different different industry types.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about what we provide, it's for clubs too, like the Boy Scouts use this. So it's
Oh,
like
brilliant.
you're not even in business. You just are the treasurer and you're trying to get some good reports to people, to your
Mhm.
board members or whatever. So yeah.
Okay. This is great.
So
What a great list of different
yeah.
organizations, and you kind of split it out in here. You're thinking about the things that we haven't even thought about. And I'm guessing the list was created probably because you've done work with some businesses in each of these categories. Is that fair
Uh,
to say?
that is fair to say, yes. And we're really passionate about wanting people to be able to keep their own books because you're going to save a ton of money. And I'm hoping that people that save money on not having the accountant do the bookkeeping, they could use the accountant for those advanced reports like, hey, how
Mhm.
well am I doing compared to other businesses like me,
Yeah.
or tax planning or
Mhm.
that kind of thing. So yeah.
Yeah, tax strategies. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well,
Mhm.
thank you, Michelle. As I want to start to wind down our conversation for today, and I want to thank you so much for joining us. And if
You're
you're
welcome.
just watching, just coming into the video or the live stream right now, we were talking today about keeping accounting records up to date for easier tax prep. And as soon as we're done watching, you'll be able to rewatch it again on LinkedIn and on YouTube. The Instagram is only going live, but you can watch it back on my YouTube channel later, certainly. And I just want to give you any opportunity for any closing comments for us for today, Michelle.
Well, I just want to say thank you for having me on. And I think, I've contacted you once before for some LinkedIn help because I'm
Yeah.
really new at LinkedIn. And your help was really very valuable. And I just wanted to give you a shout out because
Oh,
I think it's wonderful, the work you do to help people get LinkedIn going right for them. So
well,
yeah.
I'm so proud of you and your profile when I pulled
Oh,
it up on
thanks.
screen. I know you've made some tweaks and modifications based on the advice
Yes.
they've given you. So like
Yes,
you're
I
my
did.
why. When people do the
You
work,
noticed.
it's like it makes it exciting for me to see. I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
your profile looks great. It's very
Oh, thank
exciting.
you.
So I just want to thank you for
I
that.
worked on it a lot. So
Yeah, well, you did a good job.
thank
Well, thank
you.
you again, Michelle. This has been a great
Okay,
conversation. I know the
great.
advice you offer today is really going to help out a lot of people. So thank you again for joining.
Great. Well, thank you.
All right,
Bye-bye.
wonderful. And for our audience, if you enjoyed the conversation, do us a favor because Michelle and I, we are self employed. We no longer get performance reviews. So if you found the conversation
Sure.
helpful, we'd love it if you could drop us a comment and let us know. And if you're also finding great value in the video today, we'd love it as soon as the video is done playing, if you could click on share and share it as a LinkedIn
Mhm.
post. This is a really great technique if you're struggling with content, like what do I post on LinkedIn? Share the videos that you're watching. Do this with all the live videos that you watch. And when you click on, as soon as the video is done playing, you'll see a share icon at the bottom, and you can just share that along, tag us in. To tag, you use the @ symbol and type in our names. That way we'll get notified that you've tagged us in the post, and then we'll both comment back and help you to get some additional visibility with that.
Great.
With that said, I want to thank everyone so much for watching today. We hope you enjoyed the broadcast and looking forward to seeing your results on LinkedIn. In the meantime, stay enthusiastically self employed, and we look forward to seeing you on the network. Take care, everyone. Bye, Michelle.
Okay.